Welcome to Clear Enough, where we explore how to begin, be heard, and break free, even without knowing everything. I'm Drew, and I believe you don't need all the answers to start. You just need to be clear enough to take the next right step. Hey everyone, welcome back to Clear Enough. If you've been here before, you know that this space isn't about being perfect. It's about being clear enough to take your next step. And if you're brand new, first of all, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Today we're talking about something that I think a lot of us wrestle with. The idea that our work, our words, or our creations have to be flawless before they deserve to see the light of day. We wait, we polish, we tweak, and sometimes we never share at all. But here's the surprising truth. It's often our imperfect action that inspires people more than our polished work ever could. Let's unpack that together. Let me take you back to sophomore year of high school. I had to take an art class. Now, I was not an art kid. I doodled a little as a kid, but paint, pastels, charcoal, those were not my world. I was more of a theater kid. As part of the class, every student had to submit a piece to the community art show. I decided to experiment with chalk pastels. I had no experience, but something about the medium caught my attention. You could color like it was pencil, and then smudge, blend, and mix colors in ways that felt alive. I ended up creating a portrait of an ape. It might have been a baby orangutan, or maybe a chimpanzee. I don't really remember. What I do remember is this. I poured myself into it. I gave it lifelike eyes. I tried to capture the fur. And when I stepped back, all I saw were the flaws. Smudges I couldn't clean up, pencil lines showing through, proportions that weren't quite right. It felt messy. I almost didn't submit it, but I had to. It was the assignment. And here's the kicker. It won an award. Best in my age group for that category. People saw life in it, emotion in it, something authentic. The piece I thought was too imperfect to be worth sharing ended up being the piece that resonated. And that moment changed me. I discovered a love for dry media. I kept creating with chalk pastels for years afterward. I even gave pieces away to family, to girls I was dating, and I found joy in a kind of art I never could have touched if I'd waited to feel perfect before sharing. So why does imperfect work connect so deeply? It comes down to authenticity. When something is too polished, too smoothed out, too reviewed, it starts to feel fake, like CGI in a movie where the green screen is just a little too clean. But when you see the seams, when you see the brushstrokes, when you see the humanity, it feels real. It feels alive. We're not inspired by flawless robots. We're inspired by messy, breathing humans who try, fail, and try again. Your imperfect effort is proof that you showed up. And sometimes that's all someone else needs to give themselves permission to show up too. But let's be honest, it's terrifying to share imperfection. We fear judgment. We fear comparison. We fear not being good enough. I know I do. I'll let you in on something silly but real. For years, whenever I walk through sliding doors, like at the grocery store, I do the little two-finger Jedi hand motion, timing it like I'm using the Force to open the doors. It makes me smile every single time. And yet for years I kept it hidden. My wife didn't even notice until 6 years into our marriage. Why? Because I was afraid she'd think it was weird. Now she laughs. My kids even join in sometimes. What I thought was too silly to share actually became a little spark of joy for my family. It's a small example, but the principle is the same. Imperfection, vulnerability, or quirkiness. It feels risky, but it's often the very thing that creates the best connection. This doesn't just apply to art projects or silly habits. It shows up at work too. Just the other day, I had to send an email on a tricky issue. I was 85% sure I was right, but there was no way to be 100% sure. I wrote it, then I reread it, and I reread it again, and I had my assistant glance at it. I second guessed every word. Finally, I hit send. And you know what? The response I got was a little dismissive and not fully aligned with my perspective. But here's the thing, sending the imperfect email still moved the conversation forward. If I had waited until I was 100% confident, I never would have hit send at all. And sometimes progress is better than perfection. Journal prompt number 1. Let me pause here and ask you, what's something you've been holding back because it doesn't feel perfect yet? What would happen if you shared it anyway? Maybe it's a draft blog post, a song, a piece of art, or maybe it's something as simple as speaking up in a meeting. Here's your reminder. People don't need your perfection. They need your honesty. They need your attempt. Think about who inspires you most. Is it the person who always looks polished, always has the perfect answer, never stumbles? Or is the person who shows the messy process? I love podcasts where you can go back to the early episodes and hear how rough they were. Awkward intros, weird audio, unpolished delivery. And then you hear the later seasons and they've grown. They've found their voice. That journey is inspiring because it shows that I don't have to start perfect. I just have to start. One example for me is The Adventure Zone, a podcast where the McElroy brothers and their dad started playing Dungeons and Dragons together. At first, they were awkwardly following a manual. You could tell they weren't sure what they were doing. But later, they got so good role-playing and storytelling together that they started inventing their own stories, their own worlds. And that's when the magic happened. Their imperfection at the beginning was part of what made the later brilliance possible. Here's another truth. Sharing the messy process builds community. When you let people peek behind the curtain, you invite them into your journey. At church recently, I shared openly that I struggle with depression. I shared that the way it manifests for me is the constant fear that everyone's about to find out that I'm a loser. And later, a woman told me that during that talk, her husband leaned over and whispered, "Wait, we're allowed to talk about that?" That man was in his 70s, and in that moment he realized he wasn't alone. My imperfect honesty gave him permission to acknowledge his own struggle. That's the power of imperfection. It gives people permission to be real. On the flip side, what's the cost of waiting for perfection? Regret, lost opportunities, stagnation. Every day you wait to share, you're robbing someone of the chance to be inspired by your attempt. Perfectionism doesn't just keep you stuck, it keeps others stuck too, because they don't get to see your journey. I love this phrase, beta now, better later. Think about every app on your phone. Almost all of them launched as a beta version, imperfect, buggy, constantly updating. And yet people still used them, and they got better over time because people used them. Our lives work the same way. You don't need the final version of yourself before you show up. You just need to share your beta version and trust that better will come later. Let's flip the question for a minute. What happens when we don't share until something is perfect? First, people assume perfection came easy. When you only share the polished end result, you rob others of the context, the late nights, the false starts, the failures. They don't see the humanity, so they assume you're different, special, untouchable. Instead of inspiring them, you intimidate them. Second, you risk disconnecting. The more curated your image, the harder it is for people to relate to you. They don't see themselves in your story because they only see the shiny surface. And third, you slow down your own growth. Because here's the thing, improvement requires feedback. And you can't get feedback if you never share. So, When you hide your imperfect work, you're not just protecting yourself from judgment, you're also protecting yourself from growth. I've seen this play out in my career. I once worked on a project that took me way longer than I thought it should have. I thought I was being thorough. I thought I had boiled it down to just the essentials. But when I presented it, the client was overwhelmed. Too much detail, too many layers. Later, my CEO told me, this particular client doesn't want the encyclopedia. He wants the clip notes. Next time, 5 bullet points, 1 spreadsheet. That's it. I'd been so focused on making the work perfect by my standards, I forgot the point. Clarity for my audience. And in the end, what built more trust wasn't me over-explaining. It was me learning to cut it down, take imperfect action, and deliver something that was usable even if it wasn't encyclopedic. That was credibility in action. Think about the people you trust most. Are they perfect? Probably not. More likely, they're consistent. They own their mistakes. They're willing to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. That's credibility. And credibility grows when you're willing to share the rough drafts, the works in progress, the imperfect starts. Because then, when you do deliver something excellent, people know it's real. They know you've been honest all along. Perfection isolates. Imperfection builds trust. Brené Brown has done amazing work on vulnerability, but I want to put it in my own words. When you admit that you don't have it all figured out, you invite people to walk alongside you. When you pretend you have it all together, you put yourself on a pedestal, and the pedestals are a lonely place to stand. I don't want a pedestal. I want a table where we can sit together, share stories, swap lessons, and admit that we're all learning as we go. And that only happens when we choose to share the imperfect. Now let's get practical. How do you actually share imperfectly without it turning into a flood of chaos or trauma dumping? Here are 3 guidelines I've been working on myself. 1. Start with purpose. Ask yourself, why am I sharing this? If the answer is just to vent, that might be better for a journal or a close friend. But if the answer is to connect, to inspire, to help someone else take action, that's a good sign you're sharing with purpose. 2nd, filter with clarity. Imperfection doesn't mean confusion. Boil down your messy process into a couple of takeaways. People don't need every detail. They need the parts that will help them move forward. And 3rd, frame it as a journey, not a destination. Instead of saying, here's the perfect way to do this, say, here's what I tried, here's what I learned, and here's what I'll try next. That language leaves room for growth and invites others to grow with you. For me, this shows up in parenting all the time. I don't always know the right things to say to my kids. Sometimes I lose my patience. Sometimes I over-explain. No surprise there. But when I circle back and say, hey, I didn't handle that well. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better. It does 2 things. It models imperfection in a healthy way, and it shows them that growth is possible. If I pretended to always have it together, I'd not only be lying to them, I'd be teaching them that perfection is required to be loved, and that's the opposite of what I want for my kids. Journal prompt number 2. Let me pause here and turn the question to you. Where in your life are you hiding because of the excuse of imperfection? What project, conversation, or dream have you been delaying because it's not polished yet? What would it look like to take one imperfect step this week? Here's the heart of it. Imperfect action isn't just about you. It's about the people watching you. When you try, when you stumble, when you share anyway, you give someone else permission to do the same. And sometimes that's the spark that changes everything for them. I think about the man in my congregation, the one in his 70s who whispered to his wife, wait, we're allowed to talk about this? My vulnerability didn't just help me, it helped him too. Your imperfect action could be the thing that helps someone else finally take theirs. So here's my invitation for you this week. Pick one thing you've been holding back. Doesn't have to be big. Could be a half-finished painting. Could be a draft blog post. Could be an idea at work. And share it imperfectly. Don't wait until it's flawless. Don't wait until you're 100% confident. Just share it. And then pay attention to what happens. Notice how people respond. Notice how you feel. Notice what you learn. That's the magic of imperfect action. It doesn't just move you forward, it creates ripples you can't predict. So that's it for today's episode. We've talked about high school art projects, parenting slip-ups, nervous emails, and even Jedi hand motions in the grocery store. But underneath it all is one truth. Perfection doesn't inspire. Presence does. Honesty does. Effort does. And the world doesn't need your perfect. It needs your real. Thanks for being here. Thanks for walking this journey with me. And remember, you don't have to see 20 steps ahead. You just need to be clear enough to take the next one. Thanks for listening to Clear Enough. If today's episode connected with you, share it with a friend or leave a review. And remember, you don't need to know everything. You just need to be clear enough to take the next right step.